Welcome back to Eyes on Israel. This coming Sunday, April 14th, a week from today, I will be speaking live at an event hosted by Dallas Jewish conservatives at the Hexa Event Center in Dallas. I'll be sharing the stage with Frank Gaffney of the Center for Security Policy and host of the Securing America show on this network, and Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, chairman of the Dallas County Republican Party. We'll be having an in-depth conversation about Israel's war and its implications for the larger battle for Western civilization that we're all currently engaged in. Doors open at 4 p.m. Tickets are available at the link on your screen or at dallasjewishconservatives.com under the Upcoming Events tab on the menu. This past week, the IDF announced that it had completed its comprehensive raid on Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. During the course of the two-week raid on the hospital complex, Israel killed 200 jihadist terrorist operatives, both from Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and arrested over 500 more. Israeli forces also uncovered a large amount of weapons, mortars, machine guns, ammunition, stored in the maternity ward, among other places, including under pillows and mattresses of the hospital beds, in closets, and inside the ceiling tiles. One of the terrorists who was arrested is Bakr Ahmed Bakr Kanita, head of defensive operations for Hamas in Gaza City. Here's a clip of Kanita's interrogation released the other day by the IDF on their YouTube channel.
كم واحد كانوا في شيفا من حماس نشطاء حماس
مش أقل من 600 ل 1000 يعني.
في محلات معينة بالمستشفى هي تبع للحماس يعني
في أماكن معينة تابعة لمنطقة الاختصاص اللي هو اللي سموه منطقة الاختصاص الشفا ومحيطها في التقسيمة إلى قائد سرية كان موجود هو وقائد فصيل عنده بعض الشباب هذه فيها كان سلاح يعني. فراح أنا حكيت للضابط معي قلت له وين في أماكن فيها تابعة للجهاد تكون زي الولادة مثلا يكون فيها بيستخدموه مبنى الولادة تبع الجهاد الإسلامي بشكل كبير.
الجهاد يستعملوا بالولادة.
زي مقر لهم.
ايش حسب رأيك تستعملوا بالمستشفيات بكل غزة؟ حماس والجهاد الإسلامي بيستعملوا مستشفيات.
ما عدة أسباب، السبب الأول إنه ازدحام السكان يعني سهولة الحركة. البيئة كويسة بيئة مثلا الكهرباء المية الأمور هذه كلها تكون موجودة ومناطق بتضلها كيف حيوية في حركة يعني.
So there you have it. Between 600 and 1,000 Hamas operatives on the grounds of a hospital, Islamic Jihad headquarters in the maternity ward, weapons stored all over the place, and Kanita's explanation for why Hamas uses hospitals? Because of the large population. So Hamas and Islamic Jihad use hospitals as their headquarters because more civilians will be put at risk. In the words of another terrorist arrested at Al-Shifa, shown later in the same video, quote, Shifa, schools, places like that, they are our shelter, end quote. It should be noted that while Article 18 of the Geneva Conventions affords protection to hospitals from attack in a military conflict, Article 19 of the Geneva Convention states that, quote, the protection to which civilian hospitals are entitled shall not cease unless they are used to commit outside their humanitarian duties acts harmful to the enemy. In other words, by turning Shifa and other hospitals along with schools and other civilian locations into military targets, Hamas and Islamic Jihad bear full responsibility for any casualties that result from Israel's operation. Remember this next time you hear the media screeching about civilian casualty numbers in Gaza. Joining me now is political and military analyst, Reserve Major Elliot Chodoff. Elliot, welcome to Eyes on Israel.
Good to be here.
So, Elliot, we just finished this Shifa operation, and there's one thing that I need to understand, I need to make sense of, which I didn't mention in my opening, which is that the Shifa hospital is in Gaza City, which is in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. And people who are watching this war are quite aware that Israel had already moved to the southern part of the Gaza Strip a while ago, and we thought that they were done with Hamas in the northern part of the Strip. So what's the Shifa story?
Well, the United States, the White House, the State Department, expressed that question actually as condemnation of Israel. They're concerned that terrorists came back into these areas that Israel has taken. So let's try to put it in a brief historical context and military context. That is that America repeatedly in counterinsurgency, counter-guerrilla war, whether it's in Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan, has fought over the same ground multiple times because that's the nature of guerrilla warfare. It's not about holding ground. You can try to hold ground, it won't do you any good because they're moving constantly. They're dispersing, reorganizing, and that sort of thing. And here the same thing is happening in Gaza. It was predictable. It was what was known to the IDF as phase 2 or 3 or 4, depending on where you are in the system, where phase 1 was destroying their military organization scale, their brigades and their battalions, and that was done in the early phases. And then knowing that the next phase or phases would be moving to guerrilla warfare. Now, the Shifa Hospital story has an added element to it. Now, we've known that Shifa Hospital was the headquarters for Hamas and Islamic Jihad for well over a decade. It wasn't on the scale that it has been over the past months until we went in the first time. The tunnel network, of course, surprised us to a certain extent, not in its existence, but in its extent, in its depth. So they feel very comfortable in there. When we went in the first time, we apparently didn't find all of the infrastructure. And here, let's say there were two possibilities, and I don't know which is which. I would like to think that it's the first, and that is that we baited them to go back in so that we could, catch them there. But we don't have to go quite that far. And that is, they went back to where they thought they were safe. At one stage or another, early on, I think, Israeli intelligence began to note the resurgence of the use of Shifa Hospital. And we put together this operation. Took a bit of time, I think, intentionally here to allow them to feel confident, to get things running in there. As you mentioned, we've captured at least 500 terrorists, and it's a round number. It's more than 500. We've killed over 200. So here, let's put this in military terms. This is not a haven for a couple of terrorist cells. This is a military base on the scale of a battalion.
Right, and as I said in my intro, based on the Geneva Conventions, it kind of loses its status as a hospital. Talk about that a bit.
Okay, first of all, it totally loses its status as a hospital. The framers of Geneva after World War II were not naive. They wanted to maintain some sort of humanity in war, especially vis-a-vis civilians. It includes prisoners of war and other non-combatants, however they get to that stage. But they weren't naive and they weren't stupid. And they knew that if they were going to place certain areas like hospitals into a safe zone of sanctions, then they've got to also add the fact that if you abuse this, you lose it. And that's exactly what the Geneva Convention says. It's meant to deter abusers, except that if the abuser is Hamas or Islamic Jihad, not only doesn't it deter them, it attracts them, because not only does it give them cover, it gives them cover among the sick and the injured who they want to get killed. I saw a report, by the way, recently that the World Health Organization announced that some 20 people died in Shifa. I'm talking about patients died in Shifa in the 2 weeks of the Israeli operation. And the first thing that struck me was, oh, what a surprise. People die in the hospital. In other words, there was no reference to it being a consequence of the Israeli action. It was just a statement. And how shocking that in a hospital that normally has many, many hundreds of patients, 20 of them died over a 2 week period.
Well, Elliot, we just have about 1 minute left. Could you talk about the effect on civilians? There's all sorts of talk about casualties, and the news reports seem to be deliberately vague. How did Israel do in this operation in terms of civilian casualties?
Brilliant. Israel went in, it evacuated some of the patients, it brought in medical supplies. Hamas did everything it could to endanger patients and medical staff. And the fact is that from all indicators, no innocent were killed or injured in the operation. Now, I don't want to overstate it. It's possible that there were a couple, but there was nothing of any scale. Israel worked very, very hard on this operation to kill and capture terrorists and not to harm civilians.
All right, thank you, Elliot Chodoff. We look forward to having you back again on the show many, many times. Thank you for joining Eyes on Israel.
My pleasure.
As the IDF concludes this operation, the aftermath reveals a profound need for support for our soldiers. The scars of conflict are not only carried on the battlefield, but also in the hearts of those who stand to defend peace and freedom, even as they are demonized by the world media. Beneath the armor of these fighting men lies a profound commitment to life and to peace. Please consider supporting the fighting men and women of the IDF with morale-boosting care packages, essential supplies that are in short supply, and the assurance that their sacrifice is honored and supported by a worldwide community of those committed to the values of freedom and security. This is your opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel's defenders who are defending us all. Visit israeldefenders.com and click on the donate link to offer your support. Every contribution fortifies their resolve and ensures the safety and success of those who are safeguarding our shared ideals in these challenging times. We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel in just a moment.